The year is 1944, and the air war over Europe has become a relentless, grinding attrition. For the seasoned pilots of the Luftwaffe, every dawn brings the same ominous threat: the distant shimmering contrails of the American bomber streams, a silver armada darkening the sun. These formations, however, are not the primary concern. The true fear lurks above them, a sleek and deadly guardian. The German pilots, flying machines they knew intimately, the agile but short-ranged Bf-109, the powerful but heavy FW-190, were encountering a new, mysterious foe that could match them in a dogfight and then follow them home. An adversary that defied their understanding of aerospace engineering and combat tactics, changing the very nature of the air war in a way they had never anticipated.
This new adversary was the North American P-51 Mustang. To the German pilots, seeing it for the first time, it was an elegant yet deadly silhouette. Its lines were clean, its wings uniquely shaped for minimal drag, and its most defining feature, the massive radiator scoop mounted beneath the fuselage, gave it a distinctive, almost predatory profile. Initially underestimated, the Mustang's reputation grew with every encounter. It wasn't just its speed, it was its incredible endurance. While German fighters were forced to break off combat and retreat to their dwindling number of bases, desperately low on fuel, the Mustangs would remain, turning, climbing, and pursuing with a persistence that seemed impossible. This was not merely a new fighter, it was a strategic weapon that threatened to completely sever the Luftwaffe's ability to defend its own skies.
Combat reports from the front lines began to paint a consistent and alarming picture. Pilots returning from harrowing engagements spoke of the Mustang's shocking performance at high altitude, the very domain where the Messerschmitt Bf-109 had once been king. They recounted how the American fighter could dive with them, outrun them in level flight, and outturn them at the edge of the stratosphere. Its ability to maintain power and maneuverability where the air was thin was a devastating tactical advantage. The psychological impact was profound. For the first time, the technological superiority that the Luftwaffe had once enjoyed was not just challenged, it was being systematically dismantled in the cold, thin air miles above the German homeland, creating a crisis of confidence among even the most veteran aces. Then, fortune delivered an unprecedented opportunity into the hands of the Reich. Through a combination of a damaged Mustang making a forced landing in German territory and the swift work of recovery teams, the Luftwaffe found itself in possession of a near-pristine P-51D. This was no wreckage to be studied for weak points. This was a fully functional aircraft, a gift from the gods of war. Designated with the German code T9+LA, this specific Mustang, formerly known by its allied nickname Tika-4, was immediately recognized for its immense intelligence value. It was a chance to finally understand the enemy's best weapon, to fly it, to feel its strengths, and probe for its hidden flaws on their own terms, a prize beyond measure.
The captured Mustang was immediately transferred to the most clandestine of evaluation units, a special squadron often referred to as Circus Rosarius, a branch of the mysterious KG-200. This was no ordinary test group. It was a collection of the best technical minds and most experienced pilots, dedicated solely to the business of flying captured enemy aircraft. Their hangars housed a bizarre menagerie of Allied technology: Spitfires, B-17s, and now the crown jewel, the P-51. Here, the Mustang would be put through its paces by experts whose very lives depended on understanding the intricacies of aerial combat. They would fly it not as a curio, but as a weapon, comparing it directly against their own best fighters in a series of controlled, rigorous trials designed to unlock every one of its secrets.
The task of unlocking the Mustang's secrets fell to men like Captain Heinzmacher, a highly skilled and respected test pilot. These were not fresh-faced recruits. They were seasoned veterans who had dueled with Mustangs in the lethal skies over Germany. They knew its deadly reputation firsthand. Their perspective was invaluable. They could climb into the cockpit of the captured P-51 with a unique frame of reference, possessing an intimate knowledge of how their own Focke-Wulfs and Messerschmitts handled, and more importantly, how the Mustang had behaved as an opponent in combat. This was the ultimate comparison test, flown by the very men who'd been trying to shoot it down just weeks before, a chance to finally answer the question that haunted every German pilot. What was it really like to fly? The first impressions began even before the aircraft left the ground. As the 12-cylinder Rolls-Royce Merlin engine coughed to life and settled into its characteristic deep-throated roar, the pilots noted its mechanical smoothness compared to the rougher, more percussive German Daimler-Benz and BMW power plants. Taxiing the aircraft revealed another surprise: the excellent forward visibility. The long, sloping nose of the Mustang, often thought to be a blind spot, was effectively managed by the pilot simply weaving the aircraft during ground movement, a technique quickly learned. The controls on the ground felt responsive and well-balanced. There was a sense of solid quality, of an aircraft built to a high standard, which immediately began to challenge certain preconceived notions about American manufacturing and its focus on quantity over quality that had been prevalent within the Luftwaffe High Command. As the Mustang gathered speed down the runway and its tail lifted, the pilots felt its eagerness to fly. The takeoff was straightforward and stable, requiring less of the constant, vigilant correction that was necessary in the torque-heavy FW-190 or the tail-dragging BF-109. Then came the moment of truth, the climb-out. The rate of climb was impressive, but what truly struck the German pilots was the feel of the controls. The stick forces were light and perfectly harmonized. A slight input on the stick or rudder resulted in an immediate, precise response from the aircraft, without any of the heavy, muscular effort required to manhandle their own fighters at high speeds. It was, from the very first minutes of flight, an intuitively easy aircraft to fly, a quality they had not expected from a machine built for war. In level flight, the Mustang's most praised characteristic became overwhelmingly apparent: its exceptional stability. The German pilots reported that the aircraft felt as if it were flying on rails. It was a perfectly balanced gun platform. A pilot could release the controls, and the Mustang would continue straight and level without any tendency to wander or drop a wing. This was a stark contrast to the nervous, twitchy sensitivity of the BF-109, which required constant, minute control inputs. This inherent stability meant that in a dogfight, a Mustang pilot could concentrate almost entirely on aiming and firing his guns, rather than fighting his own aircraft to keep it steady. This single design philosophy, the pursuit of aerodynamic harmony, provided a monumental tactical advantage in the split-second chaos of an aerial engagement, allowing for more accurate deflection shooting and conserving the pilot's mental and physical energy for the fight itself. The comfort and practicality of the cockpit itself was another profound shock. The German pilots stepped from the cramped, utilitarian confines of their own fighters into what felt like a gentleman's flying office. The P-51's cockpit was spacious, well-ventilated, and laid out with a logical, almost ergonomic focus that German aircraft often lacked. The seat was comfortable, the canopy offered an outstanding, nearly 360-degree field of view, and the essential controls and instruments were placed for easy access. This was not a trivial luxury. In a long-range escort mission lasting hours, pilot fatigue was a critical factor. A comfortable, less stressed pilot would be more alert, make better decisions, and fight more effectively at the end of a long flight. It was a level of human factor engineering that the Germans had largely neglected, and they were forced to admit its profound value. The source of the Mustang's phenomenal performance was rooted in its brilliant wing design. German engineers, upon initial analysis, immediately recognized the advanced laminar flow airfoil. This wing was shaped to create as little drag as possible, allowing the Mustang to slice through the air with an efficiency that their own blunt-winged fighters could not match. This was the secret to its high speed and, just as importantly, its incredible range. The low drag meant the aircraft required less power to maintain high speed, which translated directly into lower fuel consumption. Coupled with its large internal fuel capacity and external drop tanks, this aerodynamic efficiency gave the Mustang a strategic reach that the Luftwaffe could not counter. They could design for power or agility, but the Mustang's combination of speed, range, and handling was a holistic engineering triumph they had failed to achieve. The mock dogfights were the ultimate test. When pitted against their primary fighter, the Messerschmitt Bf 109G, the Mustang's advantages became brutally clear. While the 109 might have had a slight edge in the initial rate of climb at certain altitudes, the Mustang was superior in almost every other aspect of the engagement. It could outdive the 109 with ease, a critical escape and attack maneuver. In level flight, it was simply faster, and most humiliatingly for the pilots of the nimble 109, the Mustang could outturn it, especially at higher altitudes and speeds. The controls of the P-51 remained light and responsive, whereas the 109's controls would become heavy and unresponsive at high speed, a dangerous characteristic in a dogfight. The Mustang was not just a different aircraft, it was a generation ahead. The comparison with the stout Focke-Wulf FW-190, the Luftwaffe's other workhorse, was more complex but yielded the same ultimate conclusion. The FW-190 was a formidable, heavily armed brawler, excellent in a close-in, low-altitude fight, and possessing a powerful radial engine that could absorb damage. However, it was significantly heavier, and its performance fell off dramatically above 20,000 feet, precisely where the Mustang reigned supreme. The FW-190's controls were notoriously heavy at high speed, requiring considerable physical strength from the pilot. Against the Mustang, the FW-190 pilot would find himself outmaneuvered, outclimbed, and outrun in the thin air where the bombers flew. The Mustang could choose to engage or disengage at will, using its speed and altitude performance to dictate the terms of the fight, tactics that neutralized the FW-190's raw power and roll rate. Of course, the German evaluation was not a eulogy to perfection. They were searching for weaknesses, and they found one critical vulnerability. The very feature that gave the Mustang its superb performance, the large Meredith effect radiator mounted under the fuselage, was also its most prominent Achilles heel. The German pilots and engineers immediately identified this system as a prime target. A single well-placed bullet in the radiator or coolant lines would, within minutes, cause the Merlin engine to seize from catastrophic overheating. This was a known weakness on the eastern and western fronts. While German fighters, like the FW-190, were designed with air-cooled radial engines that could survive multiple hits, the Mustang's liquid-cooled system was a single point of failure. This finding became the central pillar of new tactical manuals. Avoid turning fights, aim for the belly. The intelligence gathered from flying T9+LA was immediately synthesized into new tactical directives distributed to frontline units. These documents were starkly honest about the Mustang's superiority in most performance categories and explicitly warned against getting into turning engagements or prolonged dogfights. Instead, they prescribed high-speed slashing attacks, preferably from above, using the element of surprise. The primary aim point was no longer the engine or cockpit in a head-on pass, but the prominent radiator scoop. The recommended tactic was a single, devastating pass, a boom and zoom, where the German fighter would dive, fire, and use its speed to climb away without staying to mix it up. These new guidelines were a direct, sober admission of technical inferiority. They were essentially teaching their pilots how to kill a superior aircraft by exploiting its one key design vulnerability, a testament to the value of the captured Mustang. Yet, even with this new tactical knowledge, the strategic situation was hopeless. The discovery of the Mustang's one major flaw did little to alter the inevitable course of the air war. The sheer, overwhelming numbers of Allied aircraft now protected by these long-range Mustangs made any localized tactical success irrelevant.
the Luftwaffe was bleeding itself white. Every time a German pilot broke away from a failed attack on a bomber stream, a Mustang was often there to pounce. The P-51 had effectively cleared the skies of the Luftwaffe's defensive fighters. The lessons learned from the captured Mustang were like trying to bail out a sinking ship with a thimble. The technological and industrial gap, embodied by the P-51, had been opened, and no amount of bravery or clever tactics could close it. The evaluation had confirmed their worst fears. They were outclassed. Beyond the raw performance data and tactical reports, there was a human element to these test flights that the German pilots found difficult to articulate, but impossible to ignore. Flying the Mustang was not just an evaluation, it was an experience. It was the simple, effortless joy of handling a perfectly balanced machine. Captain Meiger and his colleagues, hardened by years of brutal warfare, admitted to a sense of admiration, even envy. Here was an aircraft that did not fight its pilot, but worked with them. The light stick forces, the harmonious controls, the incredible stability, it all combined to create a feeling of confidence and control that was absent in their own demanding, high-strung fighters. It was a pilot's airplane in the purest sense, and this qualitative feeling was as significant a discovery as any quantitative performance metric. The ultimate verdict from the German test pilots was both reluctant and unequivocal. They conceded that the P-51 Mustang was the finest all-around fighter of the war. It was not the best at any one single thing. Perhaps the Spitfire was more agile at low altitude, the Mosquito faster in a straight line, but it was the most complete, the most perfectly balanced blend of speed, range, maneuverability, and handling qualities ever built. They had never seen handling like it. This was not the boastful claim of a victor, but the sober, professional assessment of a defeated expert. In the end, the greatest testament to the Mustang's genius did not come from its creators, but from its enemies, who, after flying it, were forced to admit that they had been bested by a masterpiece of aerodynamic design. The legacy of the captured Mustang extends far beyond the final days of the Second World War. The lessons the Luftwaffe learned and were forced to admit directly influenced post-war aircraft design on a global scale. The importance of pilot ergonomics, the critical nature of aerodynamic cleanliness for both speed and range, and the pursuit of harmonious control forces became fundamental principles in the jet age. American, Soviet, and European designers all studied these findings. The P-51 stood as a permanent benchmark, a demonstration that a successful fighter aircraft was more than just a collection of powerful weapons and a strong engine. It was a holistic system where the machine's relationship with the pilot was paramount. It set a new standard, proving that superior handling could be a decisive weapon, a philosophy that continues to guide the design of combat aircraft to this very day.
The story of the captured Mustang is one of the most compelling and ironic tales of the Second World War. A single aircraft, designed and built in America, delivered to Britain, and flown by pilots from across the Allied world, ultimately found its way into the hands of its intended target. And in those hands, it delivered its final, most powerful blow. Not with guns or bombs, but with the unassailable truth of its own superior design. The German pilots who flew it were professionals first and warriors second. In their candid admission of its brilliance, they paid the P-51 Mustang the highest compliment possible. They honored the engineers at North American Aviation, and they secured the Mustang's legend not through propaganda, but through the reluctant, honest respect of a defeated enemy.
Don't forget to like, subscribe for more historical deep dives. See you next video.